The movie begins in Afghanistan, where Tony Stark, a charismatic billionaire, is under military escort. Suddenly, they are ambushed by unseen attackers using Stark's own technology. Despite wearing a bulletproof vest, Tony is seriously injured and captured by terrorists. But first, let's rewind a bit. Tony Stark, the son of legendary weapons developer Howard Stark, was recognized as a genius from a young age. He eventually took over Stark Industries after his father's death, with the support of his father's friend Obadiah Stane. James Rhodes, his military liaison, is set to present Tony with an award, but Obadiah has to step in due to Tony's absence, as Tony is too busy enjoying the high life and not taking things seriously, including hot young reporters who challenge him on being a merchant of death. Even though she is right, she falls for his charm and luxurious Malibu villa. Meanwhile, Tony's assistant, Pepper Potts, handles his messes as he immerses himself in projects, often forgetting important things like her birthday. Tony arrives late for a military meeting, irritating Roddy. However, Tony's irresponsible yet exuberant lifestyle continues as he flies to Afghanistan to showcase his latest Jericho missiles to the US Army. This is where the trouble begins. After some form of surgery, Tony wakes up in a cave hooked up to a battery-powered electromagnet that prevents shrapnel from reaching his heart. A doctor and fellow hostage have saved him. The terrorist group 10 Rings wants him to build a Jericho missile for them. Tony knows they will kill him regardless, but the doctor encourages him to take action. So Tony requests materials and constructs a miniaturized arc reactor, not only to replace his temporary fix, but also capable of generating large amounts of energy. Instead of building the missile, he plans his escape. The terrorists are unaware until their leader, Raza, inspects Tony's work and imposes a tighter deadline. With the final pieces in place, Tony dons his iron armor. The guards are already alerted, but it takes a moment to initialize, so the doctor rushes out to buy him more time. Once powered up, the armor makes quick work of the terrorists. Although clunky, it is terrifyingly effective. Raza attempts to stop Tony, but an improvised missile causes a rockfall, taking Raza out instead. However, the doctor is gravely wounded, and with his family already dead, he begs Tony not to waste his life after their time in captivity together. Determined, Tony marches out and eliminates the remaining terrorists, burning their stolen munitions. He takes heavy fire but activates his rocket escape, causing a massive explosion at the terrorist base. The makeshift suit, built from repurposed parts, crashes in the desert. Fortunately, the explosion catches the military's attention, and Roddy leads a rescue mission. Back in the States, Pepper is relieved to see Tony alive. He immediately calls for a press conference, during which Agent Coulson from S.H.I.E.L.D. makes contact with Pepper. Tony, now a changed man from his ordeal, announces an immediate shutdown of the weapons manufacturing arm of his company. This significant shift angers Obadiah, who is furious with Tony for potentially destroying the company and shifting focus to clean energy through their arc reactor technology. What was once a failed showpiece to appease environmentalists has become a game-changer, as Tony Stark created a working version of the arc reactor and implanted it in his chest. The company's future looks bleak, but Tony is already updating his mini-reactor. Poor Pepper Potts helps him with the procedure, extracting the old one from his chest, a process that could kill him if it fails. After completing the operation, Tony tells Pepper to discard the old reactor. Tony envisions a new project, the Mark Q, which he develops at home, keeping it off the company's servers. With state-of-the-art technology and a helpful robot arm, he almost kills himself during the process. Meanwhile, Raza survives and collects the remains of the Mark I. Pepper informs Tony that Obadiah has come to visit, coinciding with the board's attempt to oust Tony for tanking the company's share price. Obadiah suggests Tony share his arc reactor technology, but Tony decides to keep it private for now. Tony's flight suit project begins to take shape. Despite some mishaps, he makes significant progress and completes the construction. Taking a leap of faith, he tests the suit, which is managed by an AI system called Jarvis. However, he experiences an inverse Icarus moment when he flies too high and the suit temporarily shuts down due to freezing in the upper atmosphere. Despite crashing through his own house upon return, Tony finds a nostalgic gift from Pepper, the first reactor he built. As an inventor, he immediately starts making improvements for the Mark I, including a gold titanium alloy to prevent freezing. Leaving Jarvis to handle the automated assembly, Tony heads to a red carpet fundraiser held in his honor. Obadiah is surprised to see him there, and Agent Coulson tries to schedule a debrief with Tony. Tony takes Pepper for a dance, and there's a moment of intimacy between them. She doesn't want to be just another fling, and they almost kiss on the rooftop before he leaves to get more drinks. The persistent reporter confronts Tony with evidence that Stark Industries is still supplying weapons. It turns out Obadiah locked Tony out of his own company and continued weapons production behind his back. The 10 Rings are still terrorizing refugees in Afghanistan. Enraged, Tony dons the newly completed Mark II flight suit. In Afghanistan, terrorists are massacring villagers until Tony arrives to settle the score. The suit, equipped with advanced weaponry, allows Tony to decimate the terrorist forces. He leaves the terrorist commander to face the wrath of his victims and survives a direct tank shell hit thanks to the suit's durability. He continues to dismantle the terrorist operations and weapon placements, which catches the attention of the American Air Force monitoring the area. Rhodes calls Tony to inquire if he knows anything about the mysterious high-tech vigilant operating in the same region where he was previously kidnapped. Tony plays innocent but soon has to evade a couple of American fighter jets that mistake him for an enemy. He narrowly escapes destruction, and after some evasive maneuvers reminiscent of the Millennium Falcon, one of the F-22s is damaged in the pursuit. When the pilot's ejection sequence fails, Tony dives in and saves him. Rhodes agrees to cover up the incident as a training exercise to keep attention away from Tony. Pepper is shocked to see Tony return from live combat. Out in the desert, it's revealed that Obadiah not only supplied Raza with weapons, but also orchestrated the attack on Tony's convoy from the start. Raza has recovered the Mark I suit but lacks a working power source. Obadiah, having no further use for Raza, leaves him to be killed by his team. Locked out of his company, Tony asks Pepper to retrieve details of Obadiah's black market dealings to dismantle the last of the weapons. Though she is reluctant to endanger Tony's life, Pepper is moved by his resolve and agrees to help. In Tony's old office, she retrieves the files and discovers more, including another suit construction and Obadiah's direct involvement in the attack on Tony. Just then, Obadiah walks in. Pepper stays calm as she completes the download, managing to bluff her way out of the room. Suspicious, Obadiah realizes what's happened. Pepper narrowly escapes the building with the help of SHIELD agent Coulson, who happens to be visiting again to organize the debriefing meeting. The cusp of exposure for his crimes. Obadiah pushes his development team to finish building his suit, but they lack the expertise to replicate Tony's miniature reactor. Frustrated, he confronts Tony using a sonic taser to temporarily paralyze him and then pulling the arc reactor from Tony's chest, revealing his true intentions and leaving Tony for dead. Meanwhile, Pepper informs Rhodey about the situation with SHIELD's support. As Tony goes into cardiac arrest, he struggles to reach the original reactor. Just in time, his robotic arm rescues him, saving his life. Obadiah installs the reactor in his Ironmonger suit. Rhodes helps Tony get back on his feet, informing him that Pepper and 5 SHIELD agents are moving in to arrest Obadiah. Tony realizes they won't be enough and heads out to assist. He's right. Obadiah easily overpowers the agents and nearly kills Pepper before Tony intervenes. If Tony's suit is like a finely tuned sports car, Ironmonger is a tank. They battle through the streets of L.A. Tony's suit runs on the original, less powerful reactor from the cave, so he ascends into the sky with Ironmonger slowly following. The Air Force wants to scramble jets, but Proddy insists on keeping things under wraps. As they climb, Tony reaches a critical altitude where Obadiah's suit freezes and shuts down due to the cold. Tony manages a rough landing, but Ironmonger is still operational and attacks with a death grip. Tony barely escapes and instructs Pepper to overload the company's large reactor while he buys time, drawing Obadiah into position. Obadiah is heavily armed and shoots Tony almost to the brink of defeat. Realizing he must take a significant risk, Tony instructs Pepper to blow the reactor. The resulting giant energy wave knocks both of them out and incapacitates their suits. Ironmonger falls to his death into the reactor, while Tony's body is fortunately thrown clear. The following day, Rhodey and Agent Coulson provide a cover story for Tony's whereabouts to keep the media at bay. During a conversation with Pepper, Tony recalls their intimate moment on the roof. She pointedly reminds him that he left to get drinks and never came back. The movie begins at Culver University in Virginia, where General Thaddeus Ross meets with Dr. Bruce Banner, a colleague and boyfriend of his daughter, Betty. They discuss an experiment that Ross claims is designed to make humans immune to gamma radiation. This experiment is part of a World War II-era super soldier program that Ross hopes to recreate. However, the experiment fails and the exposure to gamma radiation causes Bruce to transform into the Hulk whenever his heart rate exceeds 200 beats per minute. During one of these transformations, the Hulk destroys the lab and the surrounding area, resulting in the deaths of several people and injuries to General Ross, Betty, and others. Bruce becomes a fugitive from the US military, with Ross intent on weaponizing the Hulk. The scene shifts to 5 years later. Bruce is now in Brazil, where he wakes up from a nightmare about his past. He groans and begins his morning routine, which includes feeding his dog, Rick, and learning Portuguese by watching Sesame Street and using a Portuguese-English dictionary. He also practices relaxation techniques to control his heart rate and prevent himself from becoming too angry or excited. Bruce works as a day laborer at a local factory, distributing dry goods and cleaning up while avoiding confrontations with the tough guys at the bottling factory. Occasionally, he helps with electrical repairs. One day, while working, Bruce cuts himself on a metal clip. His blood falls through the grated floors onto the conveyor belts. Panicking, Bruce yells for the belt to stop. The confused workers halt the belts and Bruce cleans the area where his blood fell, ensuring it is safe before allowing the belt to resume. No one notices that a drop of Bruce's blood falls into a bottle that is sent to the US. On his way home, Bruce stops to pick up a package. Once home, he boots up his homemade computer and contacts someone named Mr. Blue in America. They are working on a cure for Bruce's condition. Bruce applies the juice from a flower to his blood but regretfully types no change. Mr. Blue suggests Bruce come to New York for more data on contamination levels, exposure rates, and radiation types. Bruce looks at a photo of Betty and regretfully says he cannot do that. The scene shifts to an old man, Stan Lee, drinking a bottle of juice. He collapses from gamma poisoning after consuming the juice from Brazil. General Ross learns about this incident from Major Kathleen Spur and quickly orders a team to Brazil. The team, led by Russian-born but American-trained Emil Blonsky, is informed by Ross that their target is a scientist who has stolen military secrets and will likely fight if cornered. As the team heads to Brazil, Bruce receives a message from Mr. Blue saying he might have found the solution but needs Bruce's blood to be sure. Bruce reluctantly sends a sample. That night, Bruce is sleeping when his dog, Rick, starts barking. Commandos have taken positions outside and are scanning the room with a camera, which Rick promptly destroys. Realizing they are there, Bruce escapes his apartment. The commandos blow off the door and fire tranquilizers at what they think is Bruce, only to find pillows. Bruce slips into the apartment below, but the commandos find a rope and get ahead of him. Bruce, hiding in Martina's apartment, waits a few minutes before making his move, but he is immediately spotted by Blonsky. Bruce makes a run for it, scrambling across rooftops and scaling buildings. He accidentally crashes into a group of men from the factory, who join the chase. Bruce ducks into the factory to evade everyone, but the gang spots a swinging chain and the troops see the gang. The gang catches up to Bruce and starts beating him, tearing off his backpack as he begs them to stop before his heart rate gets too high. The troops arrive and capture Bruce, but his anger triggers his transformation into the Hulk. The troops fire at him, but the bullets bounce off harmlessly. The Hulk roars and attacks the troops, while Blonsky finds a higher vantage point for a better shot. Just as the last soldier is taken down, Blonsky takes his shot, but the Hulk notices him. In an instant, Blonsky is face to face with the Hulk, who picks up a vat and slams it down, sending Blonsky flying. Hours later, Ross and Spur search Bruce's apartment and computer. Blonsky demands an explanation for what he saw, but Ross simply tells him he did a good job and that they are leaving town. Meanwhile, Bruce wakes up beside a waterfall, disoriented and with torn pants. Hearing a truck, he heads to the road where the driver tells him he's in Guatemala. The driver takes Bruce into town and Bruce begins making his way north, picking up new clothes in Mexico. Blonsky, still puzzled by the encounter with the Hulk, questions Ross further. Ross finally explains that during World War II, there were numerous special programs aimed at giving America an edge, most of them under an infantry weapons development program. One of these was a biotech force enhancement program commonly known as the Super Soldier Program. About 5 years ago, Ross revived the program and enlisted Bruce and his team to work on it, but something went terribly wrong. Ross declares that Bruce's entire body is now, in his view, the exclusive property of the US government. In a conversation about their shared experiences as fighters, Blonsky remarks that if he could have the knowledge he has now in his body 20 years ago, he would be a formidable opponent. Ross grimly smiles and suggests that something like that might be arranged. Blonsky merely stares at Ross, intrigued. Meanwhile, Bruce is in Mexico and asks a man named Stan for help, who gives him a job. The next day, Bruce is seen delivering pizzas in his old uniform. One of his stops is a science lab. He talks to the guard and manages to get upstairs. After bribing the head computer genius with a pizza, Bruce accesses a computer to search for data on his experiment, but finds that it's all gone. He contacts Mr. Blue to share the bad news and then leaves. That night, as Bruce prepares to leave and Stan is closing up, two final customers arrive, Betty and Samson. They chat with Stan while Bruce, unaware, comes downstairs. Just as Stan agrees to make them a pizza, Bruce opens the kitchen door and sees Betty. She spots him, her mouth opens in shock, but when she looks again, Bruce has disappeared. Betty runs outside but doesn't see him hiding behind a dumpster. Back inside, she persuades Stan to tell her the truth. Later, we see Bruce walking in the rain along the highway when Betty pulls up behind him. She runs to him, begging him not to leave. Soon, they arrive at the house she shares with Samson. Betty reveals that she has kept all the data from their experiment on a portable drive. Bruce says he can't stay but accepts her offer of money and a ride to the bus station the next morning. Meanwhile, Ross pulls a serum from cold storage and prepares Blonsky for injection, warning him it will hurt. Blonsky grits his teeth and tells them to proceed, eager to gain power. The next day, Bruce and Betty walk through the college campus to the bus station. Betty stops to fix Bruce's shirt, making him look more presentable. He spots a soldier moving behind a column of one of the buildings and tells Betty to get as far away from him as she can. Bruce bolts, and as the soldier moves in, Betty looks around for the command vehicle and convinces Ross to come out, begging him to stop. Bruce ducks into a library, removes his pack, fishes out the drive, and swallows it before moving on. However, in the pause allows the soldiers to catch up to Bruce, trapping him under an overpass. As Blonsky moves in, they fire 2 canisters of knockout gas into the bridge, but Bruce transforms into the Hulk and leaps out, beginning to fight the soldiers by leaping around them and crushing their vehicles. Blonsky maneuvers around the Hulk like a mosquito, peppering him with rounds from a grenade launcher and leading him into the path of 2 sonic blasters. The blasters hit Hulk with sound waves, but when he sees Betty crying out, he dismantles the blasters using parts of a nearby sculpture. Enraged, Blonsky confronts Hulk and is slammed into a tree, breaking every bone in his body. Ross orders a helicopter just as Betty runs toward the Hulk. Hulk throws part of the statue at the chopper, causing it to crash and creating a huge inferno. Hulk shields Betty from the flames, though she loses consciousness, and he takes her to safety. The scene changes to a hospital where Blonsky lies in a bed, covered in plaster and plates with all his bones broken and immobile. Meanwhile, Bruce decides to head to New York to see Mr. Blue, believing he is the only one who can help him return to normal. On the way, Betty asks Bruce what it's like when he transforms. Bruce explains that everything is much more amplified. Betty suggests there might still be a part of him in the Hulk, citing the Hulk's recognition of her as evidence and wonders if Bruce could control it. Bruce interrupts, saying he just wants to get rid of it. The next day, they are in line at the Verrazano Narrows Bridge when Bruce notices a police checkpoint. They sneak out, avoid the checkpoint, and head to the docks. After a boat ride, they arrive in the city and take a cab to Empire State University, ESU, enduring a terrifying ride that has Betty screaming at the driver. At ESU, they meet Samuel Stearns, who is Mr. Blue. Stearns warns that if they miscalculate the antidote's dose, it could kill Bruce. Bruce warns that too low a dose could be dangerous, but Stearns dismisses this, clearly not believing him. Meanwhile, at a military base, soldiers prepare to move out. In a locker room, Blonsky examines himself in a mirror and notices his spine elongating slightly. He boards the chopper, and Ross asks how he feels. Blonsky responds that he feels like a monster. Stearns reveals he has synthesized Bruce's blood samples, which Bruce sent from Brazil, into a large supply to harness its limitless potential for medicine. Fearing the Hulk's power falling into the military's hands, Bruce decides to destroy the blood supply. He tells Samuel Stearns to get rid of all the samples before Blonsky arrives. At that moment, a sniper tags Bruce from outside just as Blonsky storms in, knocks him out, and shoves Betty aside roughly. Bruce and Betty are taken away in a helicopter, while Blonsky stays behind and orders Stearns to inject him with Bruce's blood, coveting the Hulk's power. The experiment mutates Blonsky into the Abomination, a creature with size and strength surpassing the Hulk's. He attacks Stearns, causing some of Bruce's blood to enter a cut on Stearns' forehead, beginning his own mutation. The Abomination rampages through Harlem, tearing up the streets and attacking soldiers. One soldier sends a message to Ross that the Hulk is loose. Ross, shocked, looks at Bruce, who is equally surprised. They manage to get a visual and see the Abomination destroying the city. Bruce realizes that only the Hulk can stop the Abomination, and Ross agrees. They move to the site and open the helicopter's back door. Betty begs Bruce not to do it, saying they don't know if he'll transform, but Bruce insists he has to try. They kiss, and Bruce allows himself to fall backward, transforming into the Hulk after hitting the ground. A fierce battle ensues throughout Harlem, and the Hulk defeats the Abomination by nearly strangling him with a chain. However, he spares the Abomination's life upon hearing Betty's plea and leaves him for Ross and his forces to arrest. After a brief, peaceful moment with Betty, the Hulk flees New York. A month later, Bruce is in Bella Coola, British Columbia. Instead of suppressing his transformation, he begins to control it, smirking slightly. Later, Tony Stark approaches Ross at a local bar and informs him that a team is being assembled. The movie ends with this revelation. The movie opens several months after. In the beginning of the first Iron Man movie, we are introduced to Ivan Vanko, whose father Anton is dying and shares his final wishes. Ivan believes he deserves the fame that Tony Stark enjoys, but Anton dismisses this notion, offering only his knowledge. Ivan discovers a blueprint bearing his father's name along with Howard Stark's, Tony Stark's father. Determined, Ivan starts recreating the arc reactor and constructs his own weaponized suit. Meanwhile, Tony Stark has become a symbol of world peace due to his Iron Man suit, claiming to have nearly solved global conflicts. 6 months after the first movie, Tony uses his armor to negotiate peace treaties among major superpowers. His popularity surges as he reopens the Stark Expo in Queens, New York City, fulfilling his father's dream by showcasing cutting-edge inventions. Tony makes a grand entrance at the expo in his Iron Man suit, solidifying his status as a global peace icon. Backstage after the speech, Tony tests his blood and discovers that the palladium powering his chest arc reactor is poisoning him. As he and Happy Hogan leave the event, a woman hands Tony a subpoena for a Senate Armed Forces Committee hearing. They decide to drive to Washington, D.C. in Tony's new Audi R8. At the Senate hearing, Tony's humor takes center stage as he disregards the government's classification of the Iron Man armor as a weapon. Colonel Rhodes presents findings on Iron Man's creation, but Senator Stern, the committee chairman, distorts his remarks with Justin Hammer of Hammer Industries present. Tony rebuts by demonstrating that he is Iron Man and refuses to give up his armor. He then hacks the committee's computers to show failed attempts by Iran, North Korea, and Hammer Industries to replicate his suit. North Korea's suit is top-heavy and collapses easily. Iran's crashes and explodes, while Hammer's suit spins 180 degrees at the waist, severing its pilot's spine. With his usual swagger, Tony refuses to hand over the Iron Man armor to the government and walks out of the hearing. At home, Tony consults with Jarvis on the latest Iron Man prototypes when Pepper enters, leading to an argument about the future of Stark Industries. Tony tells Pepper he's earning more from the company's common stock than he did as CEO, deciding he no longer wants to be CEO. He appoints Pepper to the position, leaving her stunned. The next day, a notary public, Natalie Rushman, arrives for Tony to officially transfer the company to Pepper. During a trading session with Happy Hogan, Tony mistakenly performs an illegal M&A move. Tony then has Happy give Natalie a boxing lesson, and she surprises them by taking down Happy with a TKO, revealing her skills. Tony heads to Monaco for some rest and relaxation. At a reception before the Monaco 500, where Stark Industries is sponsoring a driver, Tony meets Vanity Fair reporter Christine Everhart, who wants Pepper for the magazine's cover to introduce her as the new CEO. Tony also runs into Justin Hammer and Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who seeks a panel at the Stark Expo. Tony checks his blood again and finds the palladium poisoning worsening. Impulsively, Tony decides to drive the Stark Industries car in the race. Unbeknownst to Tony, Ivan Vanko has infiltrated the race's pit crew, wearing a harness with energy whips powered by his arc reactor. Vanko uses the whips to slice a car in half, causing a massive pileup and ambushing Tony. As Vanko wreaks havoc, Happy and Pepper rush to deliver a briefcase to Tony. After multiple ramming attempts, Pepper manages to hand Tony the briefcase, which contains a portable Iron Man suit. In a fierce battle, Tony defeats Vanko by manually removing and crushing the arc reactor battery powering his whips. The police arrest Vanko, who defiantly warns Tony, "You'll lose." The crowd is stunned by the spectacle, but Justin Hammer sees potential in Vanko and arranges a private meeting with him. While in custody, Vanko asks Tony what it's like to face death, emphasizing the pain of the palladium in his chest. Tony retorts that they both share a similar fate. Later, Justin Hammer orchestrates Vanko's escape by smuggling him a meal containing a note. Vanko kills a fellow prisoner and a guard, then escapes using explosives hidden in the meal. On their way back, Hammer's operatives intercept Vanko and take him to Hammer. Knowing Vanko needs resources to go after Tony, Hammer strikes a deal with him to build armored suits based on Tony's designs. Vanko insists Hammer is doing everything wrong and asks him to retrieve his pet cockatoo from Russia. Back at home, Tony and Pepper watch Senator Stern angrily accuse Tony of lying to the Senate Armed Forces Committee on TV. Stern threatens Tony with felony perjury charges. Tony tries to explain to Pepper but struggles to reveal the full truth. Tony investigates Vanko with Jarvis and discovers that Vanko's father, Anton Vanko, was Howard Stark's partner and co-founder of Stark Industries. Howard had Anton deported to Russia for treason after discovering his plans to sell weapons to the Soviet Union. Vanko has been seeking revenge against the Stark Empire since then. Tony, feeling the effects of palladium poisoning, is found by Rhodes in his basement. Rhodes confronts Tony about his health and his battles with the Pentagon over the use of Iron Man suits as weapons. Tony prepares for what he believes will be his birthday party and asks Natalie, who's actually Natasha Romanoff, what she would do if it were her last birthday party. Natalie responds that she would do whatever she pleased with whomever she wanted at her last birthday party. Meanwhile, at Tony's party, he's heavily intoxicated while wearing the Iron Man suit, behaving recklessly with its weaponry. In the background, Pepper and Rhodes discuss Tony's descent into recklessness. Rhodes, fed up with Tony's behavior and disregard for consequences, puts on the Silver Mark U suit and challenges Tony to a fight. The two friends battle with Tony having the DJ play music as a backdrop. The fight ends in a stalemate and Rhodes flies off in the Mark II armor, delivering it to military authorities at Edwards Air Force Base. Justin Hammer is later invited to examine the suit and provides advanced weaponry to upgrade it. The next day, Tony visits Randy's Donuts, a famous Los Angeles landmark. Sitting atop the giant donut in his Iron Man suit, feeling disgraced and hungover. S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury approaches Tony and acknowledges his problems with the government and drunken antics are minor compared to a larger issue Fury needs him to address in the Southwest United States. Tony questions the reality of the Avengers initiative and Fury confirms its existence, revealing Howard Stark's involvement as a founding member of S.H.I.E.L.D. They are joined by Agent Phil Coulson and Natasha Romanoff, whose real identity is revealed as a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent planted in Stark Industries to monitor Tony. Tony, still reeling from the revelation and hungover, fires Natasha, but she asserts that her mission is none of his concern. She informs Tony that S.H.I.E.L.D. is investigating her and that both she and Coulson are there to ensure Tony follows orders and doesn't cause further problems. Fury and Natasha discuss Tony's palladium poisoning, prompting Tony to reveal he's explored every possible solution without success. Natasha injects Tony with a serum that temporarily alleviates his symptoms, buying him time to find an alternative to palladium. In the meantime, Tony agrees to be confined to his Malibu home under S.H.I.E.L.D.'s supervision. Fury shares more about Anne Vanko's history with Howard Stark and gives Tony a chest of his father's old artifacts, hoping they hold clues to curing his condition. Tony resists S.H.I.E.L.D.'s continued interference, but Coulson assures him they won't leave until he finds answers. Reviewing film reels in the chest, Tony discovers a message from his father leading him to the original 1974 Stark Expo diorama. He retrieves it from Pepper's office and attempts to reconcile with her. In reality, the diorama contains a disguised diagram for a new atomic structure Howard couldn't create at the time, but Tony believes he can with modern technology. Tony transforms his home workshop, constructing a particle accelerator with Jarvis's help. He successfully synthesizes the new element, creating a more powerful triangular chest arc reactor that cures his poisoning. Just as Tony finishes, Coulson informs him he's free to leave, as S.H.I.E.L.D. has reassigned him to a case in New Mexico. Meanwhile, at Hammer Industries, Vanko has modified Hammer's suits into automated drones, displeasing Hammer, who imprisons Vanko and takes the drones to the Stark Expo. There, Hammer unveils the military drones, piloted by Rhodes and a heavily armed version of the confiscated Mark II armor. However, Vanko has secretly programmed the drones in Rhodes' armor, taking control as they attack. Stark arrives to confront the drones, battling the remote-controlled enemies while evading Rhodes, who is under Vanko's control. Happy and Romanoff race to Hammer's Queen's facility to stop Vanko, engaging in combat with Hammer's security guards. Happy is impressed by Romanoff's combat prowess, though slightly flustered by her efficiency in taking down numerous guards quickly. After departing for the Stark Expo in his updated armored suit, reminiscent of the harness he used in Monaco, Vanko arrives just as Hammer finishes his presentation. The drones attack the crowd, causing panic. Stark pursues the drones, engaging them in battle. Meanwhile, Romanoff and Pepper have Hammer arrested for aiding Vanko. Romanoff helps Rhodes regain control of his armor, allowing him to join Stark in battling the remaining drones. Stark and Rhodes combine their powers to destroy the drones successfully. Vanko appears in an upgraded suit with improved plasma energy whips. After a tough fight, Stark proposes a maneuver they used during his birthday party, colliding their energy repulsors to create an explosion that disables Vanko. Although the plan works, Vanko's armor and drones are rigged with self-destruct charges, leading to a chain reaction of explosions. Stark races to save Pepper, rescuing her just in time. Pepper decides to step down as CEO and shares a kiss with Tony. They find Rhodes nearby, and Tony finally confides in Pepper about his heart condition, upsetting her deeply. Stark tells Rhodes to leave, but Rhodes insists they all find their own roof. At a debriefing, Fury informs Stark that he's not fit for the Avengers initiative, but proposes a consulting role. Stark agrees on the condition that Senator Stern personally presents him and Rhodes with medals for bravery. However, Stern is less than pleased during the ceremony. In a post-credits scene, Agent Coulson reports to Fury that they've discovered Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, in a remote impact crater in the New Mexico desert. The movie begins with three scientists, Jane Foster, Eric Selvig, and Darcy Lewis, in a four-wheel drive van in the New Mexico desert, observing an aurora borealis-like phenomenon. Suddenly, a massive lightning storm appears, and they drive towards it. The van collides with a man within the storm, prompting them to stop and check on him. They find the man, who is naked, and Eric covers him with his coat. The man is revealed to be Thor. The scene then shifts to a flashback narrated as a voiceover, describing a battle in 900 AD between the Asgardians and the frost giants of Jotunheim, ending with the Asgardians securing the powerful casket of ancient winters. Odin, the king of Asgard, speaks to his two sons, the energetic Thor and the more contemplative Loki, explaining that while both are worthy, only one can be king. Odin shows them the realm of Asgard, including Mjolnir and the Tesseract. Years later, Thor is on the brink of being named crown prince during a grand ceremony in Asgard's hall. However, before Odin can make the proclamation, intruders trigger alarms in the room containing the Jotun's power casket. A destroyer robot kills the intruders, protecting the casket. Thor is furious and wants to retaliate, but Odin advises against it, stating that no real harm has been done. Disappointed, Thor confides in his close friends, Fandral, Volstagg, Hogun, and Sif, expressing his desire to teach the Jotuns a lesson for disrupting his ceremony. Together, they decide to journey to Jotunheim to confront them. They bring Loki along as they ride out, passing through the Bifrost, which allows them to enter Jotunheim, the frost giant planet, a frozen, crumbling wasteland. They are immediately confronted by King Loki, who mocks them. Loki tries to defuse the situation by claiming they are there by mistake and suggests leaving peacefully, but Thor refuses to back down, ready to fight despite the odds. They are surrounded by frost giants and a battle ensues. Loki uses his magic to survive and shows an unusual reaction when touched by a frost giant. King Loki unleashes a massive beast, forcing the Asgardians to flee. Thor defeats the beast, but they are once again surrounded. Odin arrives in time to save them, apologizing for the intrusion and attempting to restore peace. However, King Loki declares war on Asgard, attempting to stab Odin. Odin repels him and brings the group back to Asgard. Back in Asgard, Thor remains furious with Odin for not joining the fight and accuses him of cowardice. He becomes disrespectful towards his father, questioning why he didn't confront the frost giants himself. Odin allows Thor's friends to leave but confronts Thor and Loki. He is enraged that Thor's actions have escalated tensions with Jotunheim and deems him unworthy of being king. Odin strips Thor of his power, banishes him to Earth, and sends his enchanted hammer Mjolnir after him, with the enchantment that whosoever wields this hammer, if he be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor. The scene shifts back to Earth, where Thor wakes up in front of the scientist group led by Jane Foster. They quickly take him to a hospital, and the next morning, he sees that he doesn't have his weapon, Mjolnir, and in frustration, he loses control, attacking the doctors in his hospital room and escaping. Eric tries to convince Jane to leave him, calling Thor unstable, but she's both curious about and drawn to him. Returning to the hospital later, they find Thor gone. As they drive away in their van, they accidentally hit Thor again, knocking him unconscious. This time, they decide to take him with them. Jane gives Thor some civilian clothes that belong to her ex-boyfriend. Hearing locals discuss a satellite crash nearby, Thor decides to head there despite Eric's attempts to dissuade Jane from getting involved. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. learns about Thor's hammer landing and mobilizes their team to secure the area and investigate. They also discover Jane Foster's research on the phenomenon. Their leader, Phil Coulson, visits Jane to obtain her research, offering payment, but she refuses to give it up. Coulson leaves for New Mexico, where Thor's hammer landed, a site now crowded with curious onlookers trying to lift the hammer from its crater. Government agents take control of the area after dark. Jane and Thor arrive at the crash site, which is now heavily guarded. Thor attacks the agents while Jane seeks safety. After defeating several agents, Thor reaches Mjolnir, expecting to wield it again, but he is unable to lift it. Realizing he is no longer worthy, Thor is devastated and collapses in defeat as S.H.I.E.L.D. agents close in and arrest him. Thor is taken into custody and Coulson interrogates him about his identity, why he wants the hammer, and where he came from. Thor remains silent during the interrogation, frustrating Coulson. Meanwhile, Thor's friends suspect Loki's involvement in Thor's banishment. It is revealed that Loki is not Odin's biological son. He was adopted from Jotunheim as an infant. Odin falls into a coma, leaving Loki as the acting king of Asgard. While Coulson steps out momentarily, Loki appears before Thor, claiming Odin is dead and stating that Thor cannot return to Asgard. Thor is devastated by this news. Eric arrives and convinces the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents that Thor is Jane's ex and under the influence of drugs. Coulson, aware of the fake ID but allowing it, lets Eric take Thor, who discreetly takes Jane's notebook. Thor and Eric go to a bar where Thor drinks heavily without effect while Eric passes out. Thor carries Eric to Jane's house, where they bond. They spend time together, sharing stories around a bonfire. Thor explains the 9 realms and the Bifrost Bridge to Jane, who theorizes it as a wormhole. The scene shifts to Asgard, where Loki sits beside Odin, who is revealed to be in a deep sleep but alive. Loki's mother, a magician, appears. Loki is resentful towards Thor, believing himself more worthy to be crowned prince due to his biological lineage. Loki devises a plan to seize power. He freezes Heimdall with the Casket of Ancient Winters, gaining access to Jotunheim. There he offers a deal to King Loki, seeking his help to eliminate Odin and become the king of Asgard. In a twist, we discover that Loki orchestrated the earlier infiltration of frost giants into Asgard to retrieve the Casket of Ancient Winters. Now he strikes a deal with King Loki to allow them entry again to assassinate Odin and reclaim the casket in exchange for peace. Returning to Asgard, Loki's actions are noticed by Thor's friends, who confront him about his treachery. Despite their accusations, Loki asserts his authority as king and declares his intentions. Thor's friends decide to alert Thor on Earth about Loki's plans. They inform him of everything, including Odin's survival. In response, Loki commands the destroyer to Earth, instructing it to kill Thor. The destroyer arrives in the New Mexico desert, wreaking havoc with its powerful heat ray. Thor, along with Jane and her team, attempts to protect civilians, but he confronts the destroyer and offers himself in exchange for sparing the humans. The destroyer strikes Thor down, seemingly killing him. Jane mourns over his lifeless body. However, Thor's selfless act proves him worthy once again to wield Mjolnir. The hammer returns to him, restoring him to life and full power. Thor defeats the destroyer effortlessly and promises Jane he will return before flying back to Asgard. Meanwhile, the frost giants invade Asgard through the portal. As they pass the frozen Heimdall, King Loki attempts to kill Odin in his chamber. However, Loki betrays Loki, appearing to save Odin while secretly plotting. Heimdall, though frozen, breaks free and aids Thor's return to Asgard. Thor swiftly engages the frost giants in battle. Loki manipulates the Bifrost to destroy Jotunheim, intending to eliminate all evidence of his treachery. Thor confronts him and a fierce battle ensues. Thor uses Mjolnir to immobilize Loki and tries to destroy the Bifrost to halt Loki's plan. As the portal collapses, both brothers fall into space. Odin intervenes, holding Thor while he grips Loki's staff, ensuring their safety as the chaos subsides. After Loki's defeat and apparent demise, Asgard returns to normalcy, though Odin remains sorrowful about the events. Thor, longing for Jane, is assured by Heimdall that she is searching for him. On Earth, Jane continues her research in a new lab with advanced equipment. Odin approaches Thor, ready to name him the Crown Prince of Asgard. Thor, however, humbly tells Odin that he will let him know when he feels ready for such responsibility. In a post-credits scene, Selvig is at a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility where he meets Nick Fury. Fury shows Selvig an object in a briefcase, describing it as a potential source of unlimited power. Unseen by Selvig and Fury, Loki appears and remarks, "Well, I guess that's worth a look," a statement Selvig repeats. This sets the stage for future developments, hinting at Loki's continued influence and potential threats yet to come. In the present day, researchers working in the Arctic Circle uncover a large wing-shaped aircraft buried beneath the ice. In March 1942, Hydra forces led by Johan Schmidt invade a stone church in Norway in search of a powerful cosmic artifact called the Tesseract, which is said to possess immense powers. Schmidt kills the church keeper and wipes out the entire village upon discovering the true nature of the Tesseract. Meanwhile, in Brooklyn, Steve Rogers, a young man in his 20s who is asthmatic, weighing only 90 pounds and standing 5 feet tall, eagerly tries to enlist in the United States Army. Despite his determination, his medical records, resembling those of a 90-year-old, lead to his application being rejected for the 4th time. Feeling down, Steve attends a fair with his friend Bucky Barnes, where they witness Howard Stark's failed demonstration of a flying car. Steve decides to make a 5th attempt to enlist, prompting Bucky to question how he plans to improve his application. Unbeknownst to them, Dr. Abraham Erskine overhears their conversation and is impressed by Steve's determination. Encouraged by Bucky, Steve enters another recruiting station for his 5th physical exam. Inside, he meets Dr. Erskine, who has reviewed all of Steve's previous applications. Concerned by Steve's repeated failures, Erskine tests his motivation for joining the military, learning that Steve despises bullies and isn't motivated by a desire to kill Nazis. Moved by Steve's conviction and moral character, Erskine enlists him as a candidate for Project Rebirth, a super soldier experiment conducted by the Strategic Scientific Reserve. During basic training, Colonel Phillips initially doubts Erskine's choice of Rogers for the procedure. However, witnessing Steve's selfless act of bravery convinces him otherwise. The night before the experiment, Erskine explains to Steve that Schmidt underwent a flawed version of the procedure, driven by a lust for power, leading to severe side effects. Erskine chose Steve because he believes in his inherent goodness and strength of character. In a hidden military base in the Alps, Johann Schmidt brings the Tesseract to Dr. Zola, Hydra's specialist in advanced weaponry. The cube's seemingly boundless power enables Schmidt and Dr. Zola to energize unstoppable energy weapons and cannons intended to fuel Zola's inventions. Schmidt, upon discovering Erskine's location, sends an assassin to eliminate him. Peggy and Steve enter an antique shop, exchange passcodes with an elderly woman at the register, and descend into a hidden military bunker. Inside, Peggy guides Steve to find Dr. Erskine preparing a medical capsule, accompanied by Howard Stark and Colonel Phillips, mingling with senators and dignitaries. Steve is instructed to remove his shirt and enter the capsule. Stark explains the procedure involves injecting muscle regenerators followed by bombardment with Vita rays, a painful but necessary process for strength enhancement. Carter wishes Steve luck and joins Phillips in the observation chamber as Erskine administers the serum. Steve endures intense pain but insists they continue, emerging from the capsule a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier, his body optimized to its human potential limits. Celebrating the success, everyone descends to congratulate Erskine, but the festivities are interrupted when Heinz Kruger, disguised as an attendee, detonates an explosive in the gallery. Kruger fatally shoots Erskine, steals the last vial of serum, and escapes. Steve pursues Kruger, using his newfound abilities to catch up, but inadvertently breaks the vial during the struggle. Kruger commits suicide before interrogation. With Erskine dead and the serum lost, the SFR is ordered to engage Hydra directly in the war effort. Despite his transformation, Phillips decides to leave Steve behind for scientific study, sparking Steve's journey as Captain America. In an effort to rediscover Erskine's formula, Senator Brand approaches Rogers with a different offer: to tour the nation for the USO, using his image as Captain America to boost war donations and morale. Rogers accepts, and as Captain America, he performs in scripted stage shows across the country, becoming a symbol of strength and patriotism. His popularity leads to elaborate shows, appearances in media like film strips and comic books, and widespread merchandise. While Rogers is glad to support the war effort, he becomes increasingly weary of being a mere figurehead rather than actively fighting alongside soldiers. Meanwhile, Schmidt unveils his new weapons powered by the Tesseract to 3 Nazi officers who mockingly call him the Red Skull, criticizing his obsession with the occult. This nickname infuriates Schmidt, who demonstrates the capabilities of his energy weapons and reveals Hydra's split from the Nazi Party, declaring themselves enemies of the world. Using the Tesseract's energy, Hydra rapidly develops advanced weaponry and technology, posing a significant threat globally. In November 1943, while entertaining troops and reconnecting with SSR colleagues, Rogers learns that Barnes' unit was lost battling Hydra. Despite Phillips' pessimism, Rogers refuses to believe Barnes is dead and decides on a solo rescue mission, aided by Carter and Howard Stark. During a mission, Rogers realizes Stark and Carter have a closer relationship and quietly keeps his feelings for her to himself. As anti-aircraft guns from Hydra open fire on Stark's plane, Steve parachutes in while Carter and Stark escape to safety. Steve stealthily infiltrates the Hydra base, swiftly incapacitating guards along the way. He reaches Hydra's main factory and frees captive soldiers, inciting a riot that aids their escape, while Steve presses on to find Barnes. Inside the facility, Steve locates Bucky strapped to an operating table, clearly tortured. He also discovers a large tactical map on the wall, memorizing its contents. Schmidt, observing the chaos, initiates the factory's self-destruct sequence to cover Hydra's tracks and relocates to another facility. As the building begins to explode, Schmidt confronts Steve on a catwalk, taunting him about their shared origins as enhanced beings due to the super soldier serum. Schmidt then reveals his true face as the Red Skull, a grotesque figure resembling a skull. The Red Skull escapes in a unique plane, while Zola flees in Schmidt's roadster. Steve and Bucky must navigate a collapsing structure to reach safety. Bucky narrowly crosses a crumbling beam before it collapses, while Steve, with no other option, leaps over the fiery chasm. They regroup with escaped prisoners and return to base. Steve earns the respect of his superiors and is recognized as a capable soldier, given high rank and the role of Captain America to lead the fight against Hydra directly. News of Captain America's heroic exploits spreads globally, but Steve doesn't appear for his Congressional Medal ceremony. Instead, he's in London briefing Phillips and Carter on the Hydra bases he intends to destroy. He plans to recruit a team from among the men who liberated the Italian base. In a bar, Steve meets the Howling Commandos, who enthusiastically agree to join his mission. As they discuss strategy, Peggy enters, stunning everyone in a form-fitting cocktail dress. Ignoring the men around her, including Bucky, Peggy flirts with Steve, expressing her desire to dance with him someday. Meanwhile, Howard Stark equips Steve with advanced gear, including a durable combat uniform and a circular shield made from vibranium. a lightweight vibration-resistant metal capable of absorbing heavy impacts. Over the next 2 years, Steve and the Howling Commandos lead successful offensives against Hydra, frustrating Schmidt. In 1945, they attack a train transporting Zola. During a skirmish, Barnes falls into an icy river, seemingly perishing, while Zola is captured. Steve is deeply affected by Bucky's loss, but Peggy encourages him to use his grief as motivation to end Hydra for good. With Zola's intel, they locate Hydra's final stronghold. Steve leads a mission to prevent Schmidt from using weapons of mass destruction on the United States. Planning an assault on Red Skull's headquarters, Steve dons a new uniform and charges on a Harley. Inside the base, he confronts a Hydra army and is captured, taken to Red Skull's private weapons lab. Red Skull questions what makes Steve special, to which Steve replies humbly, "Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn." Moments later, Steve's team launches a daring attack, splinting into Red Skull's office and initiating a fierce firefight. Phillips and Carter lead Allied soldiers in storming the base, causing chaos among Hydra ranks. Red Skull escapes to his hangar, where the massive aircraft bomber powered by the Tesseract awaits. Steve boards the aircraft known as the Valkyrie as it prepares for takeoff. Inside the aircraft, Captain America discovers dozens of missiles, each targeted at different major American cities. In the large cockpit, he engages in a physical brawl with Red Skull. During the intense fight, Red Skull fires his energy pistol powered by the Tesseract, but Captain America deflects the shots with his shield. In the chaos, a shot hits a console containing the Tesseract, causing it to open a wormhole into space that engulfs Red Skull in blinding light. The Tesseract falls, burning through the aircraft and plunging into the ocean. Realizing he cannot safely land the aircraft without risking detonation, Captain America crashes it on an Arctic shelf. He shares a heartfelt farewell with Peggy Carter, promising to take her dancing, knowing they may never fulfill that promise. Later, Stark retrieves the Tesseract from the ocean, but finds no trace of Rogers or Red Skull's aircraft. Meanwhile, Rogers wakes up in a hospital room reminiscent of the 1940s. He realizes he's out of place when he hears a modern radio broadcast and rushes outside to find himself in present-day Times Square. Nick Fury approaches Rogers, revealing that he has been unconscious for nearly 70 years. Shocked by the news, Rogers' immediate concern is the dance he promised Peggy a year later. Fury then proposes a mission with global significance, setting the stage for Captain America's reintroduction to a world drastically changed from the one he knew. The movie begins with a mysterious being known as the Other, who is speaking about the Tesseract, a powerful energy source that is located on Earth. Loki, the Norse god of mischief, has struck a deal with the Other. If he brings the Tesseract to him, Loki will be granted dominion over Earth. The scene shifts to a S.H.I.E.L.D. facility that is in the process of being evacuated. Director Nick Fury and Agent Maria Hill arrive to assess the situation. Agent Phil Coulson informs them that the Tesseract has suddenly activated and its energy levels are dangerously high, threatening to collapse the building. Dr. Eric Selvig, a scientist working with S.H.I.E.L.D., is baffled by the Tesseract's behavior. Clint Barton, also known as Hawkeye, suggests a possible cause for the anomaly. As they discuss the Tesseract, a portal opens and Loki emerges. He immediately attacks the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents using his scepter to take control of Clint Barton and Dr. Selvig's minds. After a brief confrontation, Loki shoots Nick Fury, seizes the Tesseract, and escapes the facility. The base collapses, but not before everyone evacuates safely. Realizing the severity of the situation, Fury declares a Level 7 emergency, initiating the Avengers initiative, a plan to assemble a team of extraordinary individuals to defend the Earth. The narrative then shifts to Natasha Romanoff, aka Black Widow, who is in the middle of an assignment. Agent Coulson contacts her, informing her about the Tesseract crisis and that Barton has been compromised by Loki. Natasha Romanoff, having finished her current mission, heads to India to recruit Bruce Banner. Upon finding him, Natasha confronts Bruce and manages to convince him that Nick Fury needs his intelligence rather than the Hulk. Eventually, Bruce agrees to join the team. Meanwhile, Fury meets with Steve Rogers and informs him about the Tesseract. Steve, already familiar with the Tesseract due to its connection with the Red Skull, remarks that it should have been left in the ocean. Despite his reservations, Steve is ready for the fight and agrees to join the mission. Agent Coulson then approaches Tony Stark. After a quick look at the file, Stark understands the gravity of the situation and also agrees to join the initiative. Loki, on the other hand, continues to recruit soldiers and solidify his plans. He meets with the Other, discussing their agreement. Loki appears fearful as the Other mentions an even more powerful being in charge, who is revealed to be Thanos. Steve Rogers and the rest of the team arrive at the helicarrier. Bruce Banner begins working on locating the Tesseract, while the others focus on finding Loki. They manage to track Loki down and head to his location. Captain America confronts Loki, engaging him in a fight. Iron Man soon joins the battle, and together they capture Loki, surprisingly easily. As they transport Loki back to the helicarrier, Thor suddenly appears and takes Loki from the Quinjet. Thor confronts Loki about his recent actions and the deception of his death. Their conversation is abruptly interrupted when Iron Man intervenes, leading to a fight between Thor and Iron Man. Stark insists that Thor shouldn't take Loki back to Asgard, wanting to ensure that Loki faces justice on Earth. Captain America intervenes, reminding both Thor and Stark that they are on the same team and need to work together. They eventually agree and take Loki back to the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier. While on board the helicarrier, Thor explains Loki's plan to the team. He reveals that Loki intends to rule Earth with the help of the Chitauri, an alien race. Bruce Banner continues to search for the Tesseract, while Loki is held captive. Black Widow interrogates Loki, uncovering that his plan was to be captured all along. He intends to unleash the Hulk on the helicarrier to dismantle the Avengers, preventing them from stopping him when he brings his army to Earth. As the group argues, influenced by the manipulative power of Loki's staff, Agent Barton, Hawkeye, and Loki's crew launch an attack on the helicarrier. The chaos results in the Hulk being unleashed, who begins tearing apart the ship. Thor and Hulk engage in a fierce battle, which ends with Hulk being thrown off the helicarrier. Meanwhile, Iron Man and Captain America work together to repair the damaged ship and prevent it from crashing. During the mayhem, Black Widow confronts and fights Barton, successfully knocking him out of his trance and freeing him from Loki's control. Agent Coulson attempts to stop Loki, but is tragically killed by him. In the aftermath of Coulson's death, Loki escapes, leaving the Avengers in disarray. After the helicarrier is repaired, the team is left shaken. Thor was thrown off the ship during the chaos, Clint Barton is trying to recover from Loki's mind control, and Tony Stark is deeply upset about Agent Coulson's death. Determined to stop Loki, the Avengers regroup and locate him once more. They discover that he is at Stark Tower, planning to open a portal to summon the Chitauri army. Iron Man confronts Loki at the tower, but Loki reveals that it is already too late as the portal opens, allowing the Chitauri to invade New York City. Iron Man launches an attack, and the rest of the Avengers arrive to join the battle. Bruce Banner also arrives, transforming into the Hulk to aid in the fight. The Avengers work together to hold off the Chitauri, showcasing their teamwork and individual strengths. Amid the fierce battle, the government, believing New York to be lost, decides to launch a nuclear missile at the city. Nick Fury warns the Avengers about the incoming nuke. Black Widow reaches the top of Stark Tower, where she finds Loki's scepter. Using it, she manages to close the portal. Meanwhile, as the nuke approaches, Iron Man intercepts the missile and flies it through the portal. The missile hits the Chitaurian mothership, destroying their forces. Natasha closes the portal just as Iron Man falls back through, and the Hulk catches him before he hits the ground. With the immediate threat neutralized, Loki is captured and handed over to Thor, who takes him back to Asgard along with the Tesseract. In the final scenes, the Avengers go their separate ways, leaving the public and government to wonder where they are now. Nick Fury reassures his colleagues that the Avengers will return whenever they are needed. If you enjoy the recap, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for more.